Hi everyone, this is Stephanie Parra, AEA's Government Relations Director. We are here live down at the Capitol, and AEA is co-hosting a press conference on charter school accountability, a few bills that we worked on legislators with. So here you go, tune in.
What happens around school finances in district schools compared to charter school financial laws. So what we're going to talk about today is not illegal yet, but it should be. We should have real laws that protect taxpayers and taxpayer dollars around the expenditure of those tax dollars in our schools to educate students. So one story is out of Scottsdale, with the Chief Financial Officer, Laura Smith, in Scottsdale, misappropriated funds through self-dealing. That was a transparent transaction that was discovered by parents in the district, brought to the attention of state agencies, and Mrs. Smith was put on administrative leave during the investigation and then quickly fired once it came out that the allegations were true. She is currently under investigation, and she may face criminal charges and pay a fine or do jail time. That's how the system is supposed to work. If you're not appropriating funds the way that you should be, and most district schools do, most employees in district schools do, then you should be held to a level of accountability. The other story is out of the West Valley, out of Goodyear. We have the Bradley Academy, where we had parents and students and teachers and employees find out on the night of January 29th, the morning of January 30th, when they arrived for school, that the school had been shuttered. And the CEO, Daniel Hughes, walked away with potentially millions of dollars. That is not indicative of every charter school in the state, but it is indicative of the loose charter financial laws that don't provide transparency, allow for self-dealing, where someone can pay themselves as an employee of the charter school to provide services in ways that aren't transparent. And so instead of any investigation, instead of any potential jail time or a criminal lawsuit, he will face possibly a civil suit at most. This story has happened before in the district, and we believe that the district school supporters, the charter school supporters, legislators should all stand behind real common sense financial transparencies to provide a level of transparency to all taxpayer dollars that are used to educate students. Arizona will never be able to protect our schools from wildfires or from our seasonal floods entirely. But we can take common sense measures to protect our students from the greed of charter school CEOs and other individuals in districts or charter schools that seek to profit off of the backs of students. That's something that is and can be done and should be done. And we have 1 week left. Next week is the last week that bills can be heard in this session. And we have Senator Martin Quesada and other Democratic lawmakers that have written bills that deal directly with financial transparency, would bring safeguards and protections for the taxpayers of Arizona, but those bills are not being heard. And if they're not heard by next week, we'll have to wait another year before taxpayers can see protections around their precious tax dollars, that students and parents can have a guarantee that the charter schools will remain open every day that they send their child to school, unlike the system that we have now. So we're calling for the education committee chairs, we're calling for the speaker and the president in the Arizona legislature to make sure that these bills are heard. Let's have an open and transparent process around these great ideas. Let's get the charter school advocates involved, let's get the public school advocates involved, and let's bring some sensibility to charter school financial transparency that we are seriously lacking. There is the potential for far too much waste, fraud, and abuse around these precious tax dollars, and we need to do something very quickly about that. I want to now introduce two specialists that are going to come up and give you a lot more specifics around the issue and the problem that we have. We'll hear from David Wells, professor at ASU, in a few moments, but first we're going to hear from Jim Hall, who's part of a charter school or charter watchdog group that brings more scrutiny and transparency to charter financials than any other state-level organization, any other state mandate in Arizona. Jim?
Thank you, Joe. My name is Jim Hall, J-I-M-H-A-L-L, and I'm the founder of Arizona for Charter School Accountability. I was a principal here in Arizona for 23 years and retired from the Washington Elementary District 3 years ago to start this organization. I'd like to do a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Bradley Academy and the things that went wrong at Bradley Academy. And then of like to explain just a little bit of my perception of why that was allowed to happen. First of all, Bradley was a pretty normal school in 2012 to 2014. Had about 450 children. Their budget was reasonable. They were leasing land. Everything was good. But starting in 2015, things really changed. And in 2016, disaster struck. Let me tell you some of the things that happened just in 2016 that were available to the charter board on their annual audit. In 2016, they were in default twice on their lease for their building. They were in default on another loan for equipment. They were in serious financial trouble in 2016. Here's how they spent money. They paid off the ex-CEO, her husband, and her mother, who had all loaned the school money, over $100,000. The owner, Daniel Hughes, started 4 companies that year, and then those 4 companies sold goods and services to his school. They're companies he owned exclusively, and they sold $575,000 worth of unspecified goods and services to his school. Daniel Hughes also set up a revolving fund where he could buy things for the school at his whim and then get reimbursed for it. That's pretty much unheard of. In a public school, if a teacher buys a book and they come to me wanting a refund for it, I can't give it to them because they didn't get a purchase order, they didn't have it signed, a check wasn't cut to a vendor. In this case, he had free reign of $100,000 at a time to buy what he wanted to buy. And he bought $477,000 worth of goods and services in 2016. Also that year, they started paying their board members. They hadn't paid their board members in previous years. They had paid $58,000 to their CEO. But in 2016, when they're going broke, when they're in default, they paid their school board members $170,000, including 2 board members that didn't look like they had a role in the school, $58,000. So all those things happened. The charter board was aware of it, and those are usually concerning. That kind of self-dealing is a problem throughout Arizona schools. They warned them, and guess what happened in 2017, the following year? It got worse. In 2017, the following year, they spent even more on supplies and even more on administration than they did the previous year. The amount they spent on supplies and administration is startling. Prior to 2015, they were spending about $75,000 a year on supplies. By the way, my old middle school of 700 kids rather than 450, we had $13,000 a year for supplies. They were spending $75,000, which in charter schools, that's fairly reasonable. In 2016, that number went up to over $200,000, and in 2017, that number went up to over $300,000 in supplies for a school for 450 kids. Their administrative costs in 2016 went up to $1.7 million to run a school of 450 students. The administrative budget for my old school with 700 kids is $240,000. Their budget went up to $1.7 million. Prior to that, their budget was about $350 million for administration. So massive amounts of money were being taken out. If you compare the amount of money that was used between 2012 and 14 with the amount they used for supplies and administration in 2015, 16, and 17, the difference is $3.6 million. So Daniel Hughes was able to pull out $3.6 million more out of the school than they had previously for the same number of children. They had 450 kids in 2012. They had 522 supposedly in 2017. Now, what did the charter board do? Well, the charter board saw that they were doing all this self-dealing and found that they weren't a viable business, and so they warned them, because that's what the charter board does. And so in 2016, they were warned. In 2017, what happened? They got worse. Instead of changing their behavior to start paying off creditors and running the school efficiently, they actually spent more money on supplies and more money on administration than they did the year before. Finally, 3 months ago, October 2017, the charter board did what they should have done 2 years ago. They contacted the Attorney General because of the mishandling of funds by the Bradley Academy. Now, why didn't they do something earlier? The reason is we see this self-dealing in charter schools continuously. 75% of all charter schools do this self-dealing. They buy goods and services from themselves. It's a normal part of being a charter school. So the charter board looks at it and they make comments about how they should change it, their policies to become more effective. What they don't do is they don't look at how charter schools spend money. I have an email from a charter school board that said we don't examine their annual financial report, so they don't know that they spent 3 times more for supplies in 16 than they did in 2014 because they don't look at it. They don't know they spent $3.6 million more over that last 3-year period than they did the 3-year period before because they don't look at how they spend money. Now, if it's with a public school, the Auditor General would be monitoring the school spending. That's what the Auditor General does. That's who is pursuing Scottsdale Unified, because that's what their job is. In fact, the Auditor General looks at the spending of all state agencies except charter schools. The only people that can look at charter school finances or regulate charter schools is the Charter Board, the Arizona State Board for Charter Schools, and they're not doing it. They're understaffed, and frankly, their legislation is such that they're only allowed to look at charter schools as businesses. And even when they look at them as businesses, they failed in their duty, and this charter school closed last year. So there's bills in the legislature now. SB 1309 is asking for charter schools to comply with procurement regulations. Every state agency has to get bids. It's common sense. Yeah, we've had to get bids. As a 23-year principal, I've had to get bids back in the old days for things that cost $1,000. I had to get 3 competitive bids and get the low bid. Why? So we would spend public money well. Charter schools don't have to follow procurement regulations, and because of that, they can buy for themselves. They can create their own companies, and they can buy for themselves. So that bill in itself really needs to be heard. And as Joe said, we have a real difficult time having our legislature even read bills in committee, and we'll hope that they'll do something about it. The bottom line is the Auditor General needs to start monitoring charter school expenditures, and the Attorney General needs to investigate the Bradley Academy.
Hi, I'm Dave Wells. I'm the Research Director for the Grand Canyon Institute. The Discovery Creemos Academy, a charter school which closed last week, should never have been allowed to open this year. If we had proper financial accountability, it would have been closed well before the 2017-2018 school year began. What happened at Discovery Creemos could happen at other charter schools in Arizona due to lax state laws. So far, the legislature has prioritized who blow dries your hair legislation over improving oversight and accountability of more than $1 billion annually allocated to charter schools for educating our children. Meanwhile, the former CFO of Scottsdale Unified School District is currently under investigation for self-dealing and fraud. She could face criminal charges for her actions. Yet the more egregious transactions by Discovery Creemos Academy charter holder remain legal under state law. In our report issued in September, the Grand Canyon Institute noted that 3/4 of charter schools were engaged in questionable transactions involving related party self-dealing that did not save taxpayer dollars. And this involves more than $500 million. As a forthcoming Grand Canyon Institute report will note, 1/3 of charter schools in Arizona are engaged in self-dealing and have multiple years of net losses, which in some cases is already leading to negative net assets. Discovery Creemos Academy had known financial issues dating back 4 years. 2 years ago, their net assets topped a negative $1 million. Now, net assets are the difference between assets and liabilities. They clearly were not on a sustainable financial path and did not pass the Arizona State Board for Charter Schools Financial Dashboard. The school's academic performance had fallen from a C to a D in 2014, and in this most recent release had fallen all the way to an F. The state's charter holder had created numerous self-dealing operations, all legal under Arizona state charter law, where the school contracted directly with private companies operated by himself and his wife. In fiscal year 2016, the couple purchased undesignated supplies for the school worth more than $500,000 from their companies. Nearly another $500,000 that's not well accounted for may have been a personal slush fund for the charter holder and may constitute fraud. The school receives $4 million annually from the state general fund to operate. Will the school's charter holder receive the full payment for the school year because Discovery Creemos Academy conveniently closed after the 100th day of the school year, which determines state financial payments? Will they still get $1.8 million for the rest of the school year, even though they stopped paying teachers and educating students in January? Taxpayers deserve better accountability. Children, parents, and teachers deserve to be financially protected. Lawmakers need to hold hearings on current legislation pending with the Arizona House and Senate that will protect taxpayer dollars by improving oversight and accountability of Arizona's charter schools. They owe it to the state's students, parents, taxpayers, and the good players in the charter industry. Arizona's lawmakers should, 1, subject charter schools to the same procurement practices as district schools so they can't make sweetheart deals with their own for-profit companies. 2, empower the Arizona State Board for Charter Schools with the ability to close down financially problematic schools. And 3, re-examine whether charter school board members should be allowed to have financial interests in the charter schools they oversee. Thank you very much.
Okay, so as you just heard, specifics around what we're seeing at this Bradley Academy, the opportunity for that to happen in other charter schools around the state exists because of very lax and liberal charter school policies and laws. We're calling upon the House and the Senate and the governor to make sure that these proposed bills that we have are heard, that they are acted upon, that we have at least some transparency in the system, and that we can make sure that taxpayers and taxpayer dollars have some basic level of accountability to make sure that they are being spent in the classroom, educating children, and they're not just increasing the wealth and the standard of living of CEOs that run charter schools. Thank you all for being here, and the three of us are happy to answer any questions you all might have.
Actually, I have a question for Senator Quintana.
The four of us.
Tell us a little bit about your bill and what it would do.
Yeah, I've got a couple of bills. I've actually introduced several bills over the last several years because this isn't a new issue. This is an issue that has been ongoing for several years. I've introduced charter school accountability bills that would do several things. One, require them to be subject to the procurement rules that district schools are accountable to. Subject them to the audit requirements that district schools, public district schools are required to be accountable to. And also other bills that would prohibit new charter schools from being built within a certain radius of well-performing schools that are earning an A or a B grade now that are successful and are performing well in their communities. There's no need for a charter school to be built there. Other bills that would I think those are the main ones right now. But it's mostly good. Oh, and then the big one is to require all charter schools to be subject to the open meeting law requirements, and that's a big one because without the open meeting law, there's no way for the public to hold the leadership of these charter schools accountable by looking at their books, looking at their meetings, looking at their finances, and knowing exactly what kinds of sweetheart deals they're engaging in. So open meeting law, audit requirements, procurement requirements, and then location, where these charter schools are allowed to open up are the main bills.
Do you think that there's any chance that they're going to listen to your bills now that we've seen this kind of charter school go belly up with the same issues you've been, concerned about for a long time?
I'm certainly hopeful for that. Seeing the impact of Discovery Creemos in the West Valley and the impact it's had on the neighboring school districts as well. The Litchfield Elementary School District, there's another one out in the West Valley that have had to take in these kids, take in these families, and adjust to the new environment that they're living in. This is a situation that can and likely will repeat itself in the future if we don't take accountability now. So to have this happen now is truly unfortunate for those students and for those families in the West Valley, but I think it's shining a light to those Republican chairs of these committees that are able to hear these bills, and I'm hopeful that this will urge them to move forward and get these bills in here.
All right. You good? Okay. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, so So that was our live press conference from here down at the Capitol. We have been working on charter school accountability. AEA believes that our charter schools should be transparent with how they operate financially and be held to the same standards that public school districts are. So we'll continue to advocate for that down here at the Capitol. And tune in later today. I wasn't able to do the update last Friday, but I will do a more comprehensive update from last week and bring you up to speed on what's been happening later this afternoon. So thank you guys. We'll talk soon.